Hello, everybody in Facebook world. Thank you for joining us today at the Central Valley 4th Trimester of Arizona Village. My name is Dena Tibsherany, and I am one of the Village Leads with 4th Trimester, and I'm happy to be with you guys this morning. So welcome. Before we get started, I want to make an announcement. If you haven't seen our posts already, and if you don't know much about it, we have 4th Trimester has a conference coming up. It is on Saturday, April 23rd from 9 to 5 Mountain Standard Time, so Arizona time. And it is an extremely exciting opportunity to come together on Whova, an app. So it's all remote. You can attend remotely. To come together to be able to learn and share space and build our community together. And so the workshops that we're going to be having range from postpartum depression and anxiety and mood disorders to self-care opportunities, intimacy and sex after having a baby, 4th trimester in the NICU, postpartum supports, and so much more. And so we're really excited. If you guys haven't registered yet, you guys can copy this little QR code here or head to the website at 4thtrimesterarizona.org and register. It's very affordable at $25. And there are full scholarships available for anybody on WIC, which is federally funded, and anybody on Access. So please come and join us, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks so much, Dena.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get started, I'm going to go through just our gathering code of conduct. I like to recap this every time we meet as just a refresher. So please, as we come together and hold space together, we want to honor one another and be kind and courteous around what is shared. We are all being very vulnerable in sharing our experiences and relating. And so we ask that everybody be respectful of that. No hate speech or bullying. Also, no promotion or spam. Please give more than you take when you come to these meetings. These meetings are about learning and receiving, not about promoting. And then respect everyone's privacy as we do share information together. People are opening themselves up to share, and so please be respectful of that. And then no medical advice. Alrighty, let's get going. So I'm super excited about today's conversation, and I was really pumped to hear the feedback that you guys are also interested in learning about self-regulation.
엄마가 똥 누르고 금방 나올게, 알았지?
So self-regulation, how to regulate yourself as a mother, or as a parent, so that you can regulate your children. This is probably a topic that is something we often desire, but largely under discussed, because many of us don't put out to the world that we feel like we are kind of at our wit's end or struggling to regulate ourselves. So I'd love to open the floor up a little bit and ask you guys, what does self-regulation mean to you? You can feel free to unmute, or you can type your response in the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with. What does self-regulation mean to you? Yes, Jenny says, staying calm in the midst of chaos. Absolutely. Who else would like to share what this means to you? To me, self-regulation is the ability to notice and recognize when I'm not kind of in my own body and losing it, not in my control, and reel myself back in. I'd like to prevent it when possible and have an even keel. But the reality is that we're humans and we're people and we have human experiences, and having that like recognition of like, okay, I am about to lose it. What do I need to do to like, woosah, right? Calm down, regain my control. Sandra says, being in tune with my feelings. Absolutely, Sandra. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so I have spent the past over a decade talking about self-regulation. Sue says, controlling any emotion and action in any situation. Yes, being in control of your emotions despite the triggers in the outside world and the things we cannot control, right? So over the past decade of more than a decade of doing this work, self-regulation has been a huge topic in what I have practiced in my work and practiced in my life, and what I have taught as somebody who's a leader in the work. And the most simple way that I've brought it down to kind of remembering and holding myself and being grounded in self-regulation and teaching this is through the 5 W's. So it's very elementary, like the who, what, where, when, why, and sometimes how, right? And so that's how I'm going to approach this today, is approach it from that perspective. I found oftentimes that it's necessary to address each one of these components, because if we just focus on how do we regulate, we often miss the point, right? Like we miss the cue and we can be off mark. We have to be rooted in our why. We have to be rooted in who's responsible for doing the regulation, and why is it that person, and what does it look like? What is our ideal outcome going to look like versus maybe what standards we hold ourselves to that might not be truly achievable, right? So we're going to address each one of these as we go through our training together today. And I'm not going to do them in order, so I hope that doesn't throw you off. I'm going to make it make sense for the flow of the presentation. So let's start with what. What is self-regulation? This is how we regulate our body and our nervous system. And so many of us have heard of the term nervous system before. It's our ability to regulate our emotions, our heart rate, our blood pressure, right? Our body temperature. Our body can turn into itself and regulate so that we can continue to exist despite what's going on in the outside world. And in turn, we also regulate our emotions. And emotional regulation is the skill needed to withstand stress, chaos, and overwhelm despite a lack of an ideal opportunity. Now, I made this definition up based off of my experiences. It's not the Webster definition here, but it's real life. It's our ability to really stay grounded despite everything going on around us. As parents, it's easy to acknowledge that we might not be fully in control of every aspect of things going on. I know when I became a mom and I birthed my son, I had the immediate realization that I have no control. Like, he's his own person. He's going to cry if he wants to cry, despite everything that I might do to help. I don't have that control. I can't, like when he was in my belly, I could protect him. I could keep him safe, and it was all contained, right? And then I birthed him and it was like shock and overwhelm of, wait a second, I don't have the control I thought I would have when I became a mother. Meaning this emotional regulation, when your little one is losing it, right? Like if they're a baby and they're crying and you fed them and you changed their diaper and you've rocked them and you've consoled them and you don't know what else to do and you've checked their gums and they're not teething and you're just like, calm down. Why won't you calm down? Like that can make you feel like you're going to lose your mind too. And you might get frustrated and overwhelmed and be like, I have to set you down for a second and walk away, even if you're crying, so I can breathe and get through this. And that need to be able to recognize when our little one is losing it, we might not always feel like we have it together. And emotional self-regulation is necessary so that we're not constantly losing it too. Now, this is to say, as a parent, you will have times that you lose it, right? Because we're human, but we learn from those experiences. Each one of those moments that we lose it is a moment for us to reflect and identify, okay, what triggered me, right? How did this feel inside my body? What could I have done differently? What do I need, right? What do I need to continue moving forward? And so the what of self-regulation is not shooting for always having it together and just seeming like this calm, like human who doesn't get influenced by everything going on, but it's the ability to have some foundation in our regulation, some homeostasis, right? That we can rely on and live in so that when big things hit, we don't spike up here super, super fast. We might spike a little, recognize it, implement our tools, level out, come back down, right? And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about emotional regulation. Do you guys have any questions on the what before we jump into the who? Hi. So who is responsible for emotional regulation? Well, when you're a parent, it's you, right? You can only control yourself in this dynamic. And as a parent and caregiver of the home, we hold the reins for regulating our household. I don't know if I used the right word of reins in this presentation. I'm just questioning that, but we set the tone for our home, and we're at the whim of those. We are at the whim of. We don't want to be at the whim of those around us, right? So, for instance, like Jenny was sharing with her son, she had to learn how to regulate herself because her son's struggles were going to be a little bit more severe than she had anticipated and expected, right? And she doesn't want her life to get thrown upside down every single time her son feels like his life is thrown upside down, because then she can't set the tone for the home anymore, right? Same with my son. He's now 5 years old, and he still has tantrums. And as he goes through a tantrum, if he's in the grocery store throwing things out of the cart and mad, and I'm getting mad and I'm throwing things back in the cart, we're like, there's nobody setting the tone how we're going to get through that moment, right? There's nobody creating that calm that's necessary. And so it's important that we know, no matter how old our child is, right? No matter the dynamic of age and the relationship, we're responsible for regulating ourselves. And our ability to regulate ourselves will impact the ability of those around us to regulate themselves, right? So why does that work? It's because our nervous systems communicate with one another. Our nervous systems, our brain stems, I like to break it down, our brain stems talk to one another, right? So the brain stem is a part of the brain that's responsible for basic regulation of your body. When you're developing in the womb, your brain develops from the bottom up, and it develops through the process of starting to form that little heartbeat. So, when you go into your scans when you're pregnant and you go and they do the heartbeat monitor on your belly and you're like, oh, I hear it, right? Like that heartbeat is that symbol for us, that symbol like of life and that symbol of regulation. And they check that heartbeat to make sure that the baby's not under stress and that everything's okay. And so it's the heartbeat. It's the ability to like have your breath patterns of in and out. It's the navigation of your body temperature despite the temperature of the world outside of you. And so I like to think of it from brainstem, like thinking of it as a brainstem. Our brainstems talk to one another. And if you've ever walked into a room and people are really dysregulated, you don't have to hear them say anything. You feel it. You feel it inside your body. You get a message and you're like, ooh, what did I just walk into? And maybe you want to like back out, right? You're like, never mind, close that door. I'll come back later. But your body picks it up, right? Our first language that we learn as humans is not words, right? It's energy. It's the feeling, the connection, it's the nervous systems talking to one another that we learn first. That feeling of, I feel safe around you. I feel supported. I feel comforted by you. You feel like a threat. You feel dangerous. I have something inside my gut telling me this is off, right? That's the first language we learn. And that's the basis of what we're going to focus on when we're thinking of regulating our nervous system. So we never want to underestimate the power of energy. And there's that quote that people say regularly, your vibe attracts your tribe, right? And it's so, so true. If you're holding your own energy and you're regulated in your life, you're going to attract more regulated people in your life, right? Because our nervous system is going to communicate to them. I'm steady, I'm stable. You can come into my presence and you can become steady and stable too. I don't have to ramp up with you. You can come down, right? You can come down with me. Any questions on any of this so far?
I was just going to say, Dena, that I'd never actually thought about it that way, but you're totally right? Like I know I have some friends where when I'm in their presence, I just automatically feel so much more calm. Right? And I want to be around them because of that. That makes total sense.
Absolutely. If we think of the intelligence that our body holds, we don't often, it doesn't come to our, the front of our mind regularly, right? Like we just experience it and we live it. But when we bring awareness to that, you become aware of how smart our bodies actually are and how attuned we actually are in recognizing like, oh, I'm drawn to you and I'm going to spend more time with you. I want to, right? Not a conscious decision, but like a pull. I feel pulled and connected to you.
Absolutely.
Mm. Okay, so here's the big question that everybody has. How do we do this? How do we do this? How do we stay regulated amidst the chaos, amidst the storm? How are we the person who can be like the even Steven when the house feels like it is on fire with tantrums and overwhelm and screaming and just fits, right? How do we do this? Well, there are some tools you already use, like Jenny pointed out, that some might be conscious and some might be subconscious, right? Subconsciously use it like you do being drawn to your friends, Jenny. But there are things that we can physically learn to regulate our nervous system. And I want to bring it down to thinking of it through our mind, body, soul, and home. So 4 categories. Mind, reframing your thoughts, right? Being able to use the power of thought to shift our feelings. Body, being able to use the intelligence of our body and our nervous system and our vagus nerve and our communication highways in our body to regulate ourselves. Our soul, on a spiritual level, whatever your belief systems may be, people who believe in some sense of a higher power outside of themselves, whether they call it a God or a universe or a wise entity, a belief in a spirit or a higher power above us, creates hope and it creates stability, right? Creates connection in tough moments. Like we can borrow some of that strength. And then through our home, our environment affects our mood and our sense of control, right? So we're going to break up and go into each one of these together so we can learn these 4 different aspects. And please, if you have questions, you can raise your little hand emoji, you can unmute yourself, you can put it in the chat, whatever way is best for you. Okay, so one thing I like to do as a trick for our mind, did you know that your eyes are actually a part of your brain outside of your skull? Who knew that? Jenny knew that. When I learned that, I was like, mind blown. It makes so much sense. So much sense. But what we see infiltrates our brain, our thinking, our thought process, our mind, our circadian rhythm. It infiltrates everything, right? It impacts everything. And so one thing that we can do to change our sense of being, our regulation, to ground ourselves and center ourselves, is to change our view. And that doesn't mean that you have to it could mean that you go on a walk, could mean that you go in a different room. But if you don't have that capability, it could mean that you pick up your phone and you watch a YouTube video of the ocean. Like it could be whatever tool you have at your disposal to regulate yourself. But being able to use your eyes to focus in on something and allow yourself to feel calm around that has immense power. And you can be as creative as you want with it. It could be looking at a flower and appreciating it in all its glory and letting your eyes first take in the image of your flower and then letting your brain take in the thoughts of what you love about it, right? Like I'm looking at it and I'm looking that the petals are soft and I'm looking that the center is yellow and I'm looking that there's little lines on it and I'm looking that this one's starting to die, right? Or starting to wilt more. Whatever it is, to ground yourself and bring yourself in, but take a moment to have control over what you view. Even if you're like, my house is a disaster, a time bomb went off in it, right? Like I feel like in 5 minutes, the whole house exploded since everybody got home and I don't understand how or why. And I don't know, there's nothing beautiful to look at that makes me feel good. Like find one simple thing. It could be what you pull out of your pocket on your phone, right? How many
Dena,
of you? Yeah.
well, I was just going to comment. I wonder if some of that is why I mean, I guess I don't know if this is everyone, but many of us are enamored with sleeping babies and sleeping children. Right? Like it's a chance to like observe and all the beautiful things about them and how wonderful they are. And, you know, we smell their heads, like all those things. That's actually kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, sleeping children are grounding.
They're so calming. It just
Yeah.
like speaks to your heart, fulfills you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's such a great point, Jenny. What are other ways that you guys have noticed things that you've looked at that immediately impacts the way you feel for the better?
I am really into gardening. And so to be outside in nature and to be tending to something that I am in charge of that isn't a human being is completely grounding. Obviously, I'm outside, I'm touching the ground physically, but I'm also helping something that I I feel like obviously I didn't create. So I'm just helping and tending to it. Something else just had created it. So to me, it's grounding and it makes me change my perspective on everything when I'm outside tending to plants of some kind.
Ah, it shifts your thoughts to a space of gratitude, huh? Gratitude and presence. Thank you for sharing, Camille. Would anybody else like to share? Oh, it looks like Sandra said the sky, looking at the sky. Absolutely. I love, especially when we don't get many clouds floating by, I feel like. But when we do have clouds in the sky, I could stare all day. Oh, feels so good.
And for me, it's water, bodies of water. So I know many of you, if you've been on these calls, you've heard that I go and visit the ducks most mornings. But yes, watching the water. And then usually the ducks will do something silly, and that seems to help too.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you, Camille, around gardens. I also think of like forests and just admiring ginormous trees. Like my brain goes to the lifespan of that tree and all that of it's endured and all the wisdom in that tree and all the life it's housed. And it's a space of immense gratitude for me, and it shifts me immediately, right? And you can take it into your senses too, like smelling the garden, smelling the forest, smelling the fresh air when you look at the sky or the bodies of water. So grounding. And if you can't get outside, you can simply go like this and let your brain take control, right? Put yourself on that beach just for a minute. Take it in, hear the waves crashing, imagine the smell, imagine you hear some birds. You can let yourself go into that just for a few seconds and then come back out. Another way that we can use our body is through our breath. And our breath is designed not just to sustain our life by filling our lungs and letting us have oxygen and being released, but it is a calming tool that we have. It directly connects to our nervous system. It is a tool that is our vagus nerve runs through and connects to our largest organs in our body, from our gut all the way up to our brain, right? And it, how do I explain this? That nerve is the information highway for self-regulation, and more than 85% of the information that travels that nerve travels from the body up to the brain. And so our brain is receiving the information from our body to regulate. Oftentimes we get it flipped. We give our brain a whole lot of credit and we say, I know better. I should do better, right? I know the lesson. Why don't I get it, right? I understand I shouldn't feel like this. Like I can't logic my way out of this. Why can't I logic my way out of this? Well, the brain doesn't have as much power that we think it does when we talk about regulating our body. The vagus nerve is the largest nerve that's responsible. It connects to our amygdala, which is our fight, flight, freeze responses, which get triggered when we are about to lose our cool, right? Like that's the part of our brain that gets triggered and we're like, can't do it anymore, gotta walk away. Or it's like we enter into the power and control struggle with our 2-year-old and we're like, why? Because this is pointless, right? But we enter into it because we feel that need to fight back for our control of the situation again. And so we're not using the thinking part and the logic part of our brain when we feel that way. We're using the survival mechanism of our brain. And so if we want to communicate to that survival mechanism of our brain, the way to communicate to it effectively is through our body. And our lungs, our breath, our bellies expanding and contracting as we do deep belly breathing communicates we're safe. When our exhales are longer than our inhales, when our diaphragm can open and expand and contract in a slower pattern, we're telling our brain, whoo, we don't have to fight. We don't have to flee. We don't have to appease. We can calm down and get out of survival and be okay. And then we'll be able to move through this. And so that's a tool that's so important to know about. But your breath, inhaling in through your nose is a very powerful way so you actually change the composition of the air that you're breathing when you breathe in through your nose than if you're breathing through your mouth. So breathing in through your nose and exhaling through your mouth longer than your inhale while you're keeping your belly soft and relaxed is a really powerful way to talk to that vagus nerve, to treat to your nervous system. So we're going to try it together for a minute. I invite you, if you feel comfortable, to do this with me. My favorite deep belly breathing exercise is called soft belly breathing by Dr. James Gordon. He's the author of the book, The Transformation, and he's a world renowned trauma therapist and researcher who travels to treat the most traumatized populations of the world. And he uses this technique, the soft belly breathing technique, to help people regulate and move out of that survival mindset, right? That survival mechanism of the brain. So I invite you, if you're in a space where you feel comfortable, to close your eyes. I invite you to close your eyes. If not, you can just soften your gaze and tap into your body for a second. You can put one hand on your belly if that feels good, and one hand on your chest, and you're going to feel your belly rise as we do our inhale. And then you want your belly to rise and your chest to rise, and then your chest to go down, your belly to go down, like a wave, right? You want it to be like a wave. And I invite you to take a deep breath in through your nose. Out through your mouth with your belly soft and relaxed. Breathing in through your nose. Out through your mouth. Then you can say to yourself in your mind, a soft belly, to remind yourself to keep your belly soft and relaxed. You can say soft as you inhale. Belly as you exhale. Soft belly. Soft belly. One more time. Soft belly. Good job. And just check in with yourself. How do you feel after taking that breath? What did that do for you today? Was it grounding and calming, centering? Feel free to enter into the chat or unmute and share with me. So peaceful. Thank you. You're welcome, Sue.
Yeah, totally different.
It can be like a night and day experience. And that took us like less than a minute, right? Less than a minute. You can also, instead of using soft belly as the mantra you say, you can say whatever matches what you need, right? Calm body, calm mind, calm body, calm mind. Or sometimes I'm like, I'm okay. It's okay. I'm okay. It's okay, right? Like just reassuring myself in that moment. But whatever you need to say to yourself, as long as you're breathing those deep belly breaths in through your nose, long exhale out of your mouth. And that doesn't take any additional time. It doesn't take a special location. You don't have to have a perfect lineup of things to happen for you to take a breath, because you're breathing already. You're breathing like subconsciously already. And usually when you're upset, you're breathing rapidly in short breaths, right? And your big inhales, like short exhales, big inhales. And so just flipping it and consciously doing this doesn't take extra money, doesn't take extra time. It doesn't have to notify anybody around you that you're trying to calm yourself down. If you're out in public, it can simply be you being conscious about your breath and intentional about your breath. Another way of regulating, and this one is really big for me, it is co-regulating. So remember how we talked about our nervous systems speak to each other, they communicate to each other? We can intentionally use this. Babies need this. They need to co-regulate with somebody. They don't yet know how to regulate themselves. And they borrow our energy. We give it to them. They borrow it to regulate. We shush them, we pat them on the back, we rock them, we sway them, we hold them in our arms. They hear our heartbeat, they smell our body, they smell our breath, they hear our breathing, they hear our words, like the sound of our words, right? They that recognition of that safe space that they grew up in inside our bellies, right? They need that as they regulate into the world around them. And all of that typically is pulled in through their senses and tied in with rhythm, right? It's tied in with rhythm, the rhythm of our heartbeat, the patting on their back, the rocking and the swaying, right? Hearing our breath in and out. It's all forms of rhythm that come in and regulate and speak to their little nervous system to calm them down. Well, just like our babies need that. We need that as adults, right? How many times do you go when you're super upset, do you elicit a hug from somebody? Subconsciously, you might do it. Other times you might be like, don't touch me. But being able to recognize I need to go pet my dog. I need to go snuggle my cat, right? I need a hug from my husband. And I'll even ask my son, like, I'm really anxious right now. I'm worried about something. Can I have a hug? And he'll come on in for it. And I can squeeze him and I can smell him, which I love my baby's smell so much. And I can wrap up and I feel so much better. But I elicit that throughout my day. And I've come to the place of being able to say it to my husband, like, I need to co-regulate. And he knows what it means. I need a hug. I am feeling overwhelmed. And he holds me and I don't know, maybe I'm very centered around smells, but I can smell his smell and he'll pat me on the back, or he'll rub my back, or he'll rub my hair. And all of that stuff brings me back to that safe space inside. And so sometimes it's easier to regulate when we can borrow somebody else's energy. We don't have to rely on it as our own. Do you guys have experiences of this in your own life? Have you recognized that you do this or that you need this?
I realized I could do this with my pet. Not that I don't do it with other people in my life, but yeah, especially when I'm home and everybody's at school. And I realized I could get the dog to come sit next to me, and just petting the dog for, whatever amount of time just totally calmed me down. Yeah, that was sort of amazing. I think I'd heard about it, but I never thought it was actually something you could do. And I sat there and I was like, oh, yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. Dogs often know too. They come to us when we're upset and they're like, hi, are you okay? Let me put my head on your lap. And you're like, oh, I feel so much better now. Thank you.
My dog definitely knows.
Yeah.
Sometimes when other people are freaking out in my house and I'm trying hard to stay calm, the dog will come and sit on my lap.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting to watch. Yeah, I'll be like, how did you know?
Mm-hmm. They're brilliant. So attuned. Anybody else want to share their experiences with this or aha moments around this?
I want to share mine that I have the same thing with the dog. Sometimes when my son's taking a nap and I have a hard time like calming down, he's like 50 pounds, so he's like always sleeping on my bed, and I just like lay right next to him. I put my pillow there and I like wrap around him, and it's like because I feel his like heartbeat and like him breathing in and out, and so that like makes me like breathe slower and stuff, and then I can fall asleep. But I have a really hard time the opposite when my 2-year-old in the past 2 days is just starting to go through tantrums like while I'm on the call here with you guys. And so it's like I have a really hard time the reverse, like now I have to be calm so somebody else can be calm. And that's really hard. Like I feel like there's so many triggers, like when you see somebody else getting crazy and then sometimes you get crazy. So that's a problem for me.
Yes. We'll speak to that in a minute here through the slides. I think that's something all of us can resonate with, is being able to recognize like being the person who's steady when everyone else is upset is hard. And some of that's going to come from preventative action steps, and some of that's going to come from being reactive in the moment. And the preventative one creates the foundation for us, right? When we can preventatively do things throughout our days that regulate us and let it be second nature. It doesn't have to take extra time, right? It doesn't have to be something like, oh my God, I don't have time to do this right now. It's literally like, oh, I'm going to focus on how I'm breathing while I'm washing dishes. Like I'm going to look at something beautiful while we're at the park together and recognize that, or while we go on a walk together, or while we're playing in the backyard, or even while we're cleaning up our toys. Like whatever it is, whatever your responsibilities are during that, you can continue bringing yourself back down to this so that you create that homeostasis. Because many of us don't know what our homeostasis is when we've been living in a state of surviving for so long. And I'm using the word surviving because oftentimes in motherhood, it can feel like we are literally just getting by. Like we are just by the skin of our teeth getting by. And that is surviving. That's not thriving, right? And so if we want to develop some homeostasis or ground that becomes familiar in our brain, that's easier to get to because it's familiar, because we've built up that like muscle memory to it, we've created a stronger connection in our mind for it, we can come back down to it easier. And so being able to do these during regulated times is powerful as well. During non-stress times where you have like downtime, instead of scrolling on your phone or tuning out to the TV, or oftentimes we disassociate, like we date. I'm a really big daydreamer. We daydream, like whatever it is, try to be in the present moment and more intentional about those spaces so that we build that up, and it's easier to use that reactively when we need to as well. I also want to speak to gratitude, and we talked about it a little bit already. Gratitude's often seen as like a cliche solution. Like, don't you tell me to focus on gratitude. Gratitude gets a lot of focus in the world because it's really powerful, but also with that attention that it gets, I feel like it can get minimized a little bit too. Or people say like, yeah, like, don't tell me that. Like, you're just blowing smoke. But it's true, right? Gratitude is powerful because it forces us to shift our brain out of our thoughts of I don't know, fuming. And I can get in my head and I'm like, why am I thinking about this? And why did I just like snowball in my brain about something that hasn't even happened, or that's like super old and doesn't apply to me today? Or we already got through and I'm still like spinning on this thought forever. If we can focus and force our brain to think about a positive thing instead, something we're grateful for, even if it's like, I'm grateful I have a door to my bathroom that I can close. Like super simple. I'm grateful that my toilet flushes. I'm grateful I have ice for my water. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It can be like very basic. I'm grateful I have deodorant today. Very basic things. But if you can get your brain to focus and shift to that basic piece of gratitude, you can see and feel a dynamic change in your brain because you're disrupting the pattern of anger and angst and frustration around what you can't control and how upset you are. Right? The things like, oh my gosh, stop crying. I can't handle this right now. I'm supposed to be doing something. Why are you doing this? Like, I thought we had an agreement. You were going to do this and this isn't working. And I gave you a snack already. What's wrong? And you're just like, oh my God. And then you're like, no, the grass, that patch is green in my yard. Oh my goodness. Thank God. I've been working on making the yard green and I have my first green patch. Like, whatever it is that makes you feel grounded and has that spark of something that is just meaningful and powerful to disrupt that snowballing of the negativity. Okay, so we just talked about this. When do we use this? When do we use the tool of self-regulation? So proactively create habits and lifestyle changes that promote a more regulated nervous system. Again, it's just about living with intention, not about adding more to your plate. And then reactively, we can use it by knowing our warning signs. So Katie, you spoke a little bit about your warning signs, right? Like the tantrums are coming when I'm supposed to be on a call right now. Like warning sign, trigger. This is a triggering moment for me. I feel like I can't hold it together. And then we're going to practice something called the 90-second rule. So I love using facts, what research has found to be true, to inform myself of how I can use that for my benefit. And research has found that our brain, when our brain releases a chemical and it floods our brain and then washes out, that is a total of 90 seconds from the release to being washed out. So if we use that knowledge for this scenario, we can say, I have 90 seconds of my stress hormone being triggered, the cortisol, all the being triggered into my brain. I have 90 seconds and then it's going to be gone. And I have an opportunity when it's washed out to trigger a different hormone to be released through my brain, right? I can trigger dopamine to be released, serotonin to be released, endorphins to be released into my brain, the feel-good hormones to come in after that 90 seconds. Now, the catch to this is you can re-trigger. Like you might be thinking, no, man, I'm upset longer than 90 seconds. We often re-trigger ourselves to push that hormone through our brain again. So, okay, I was upset for 2 hours, right? So like I was upset for 2 hours the other day and I was fuming and I couldn't get out of my funk. I kept triggering that hormone to be released. Now I need to communicate to my body intentionally. Remember, intentions are what's going to change the game for us here. I'm going to intentionally communicate to my body that I don't need that stress hormone to be pumped anymore. And we're going to disrupt this cycle. So after that 90 seconds are over, I'm going to do my best to introduce a different hormone into my brain through the use of my body, through the use of what I'm seeing, the thoughts that I have, all the things that I can control within me, despite the chaos going on around me, to shift that. And once I make that shift after that 90 seconds, that first shift's the hardest, but then I know, okay, that worked. I'm going to keep doing this because the tantrum hasn't stopped. So I'm going to keep doing this for myself. I'm going to keep breathing like this. I'm going to keep playing music that feels good to me. I'm going to keep looking at the garden while we're managing this moment, glancing over that and having a thought of gratitude as we go through it so that you can continue to trigger the good hormones and the positive self-talk to keep refueling that good hormone, that feel-good hormone to trigger through your body, right? And disrupt that cycle until the stress is gone, till the tantrum stops and you feel composed and you've got this. And you'll find when you move into that headspace that's calm and you have the feel-good hormones pumping through your brain, you can now move to using your brain better. Like you can move to using your prefrontal cortex. You have access to your logical thinking. And all of a sudden you have ideas of how you can help your child get through their tough moment that you didn't have before. So it opens up a new pathway for you to be able to access solutions and problem solve once you're steady and easygoing. When we try to problem solve when we're stressed and we're in our survival mode, the problem solving is less about the child and it's more about us needing our control back. And it typically looks like a power and control struggle, right? Or it looks like I can't do it, and you like blow up and walk away, right? So we don't want that. We don't want that. We want to be able to use the thinking part of our brain, but to get there, we have to get away from the fight or flight part of our brain, meaning we have to allow our brains to calm down through the use of our body, pump the good hormones in, and get to thinking so you can solve the problem. And then typically our solutions are more effective, right? Like the solution of throwing our hands up and walking away kind of elongates the problem because then we've just hurt our kids' feeling or made a bigger situation out of it, or our spouse saw it and they feel like they have to come in, like, and it can exacerbate it. So it can bring a quicker end if we use this 90-second rule. Who has questions about this? Is this news to any of you guys? Have you heard about the 90-second rule before?
I've never heard of that before at all. It's very interesting to know that. I really associate with like the ongoing like triggers. Like I had one trigger and now there's another one and another one. So it's easier when you just feel like there's like one and then you can like use this and move forward. But it feels like when it's just like ongoing, it's really hard to like stop and be able to like do any of these things that you're saying. So
Yeah. And are you, Katie, are you doing it alone?
am I doing what alone?
Are you having to regulate alone? Like, I mean, I know you said you have your dog sometimes to help, but is there another regulated adult to help you?
No, because usually my husband has his own issues. They're worse than mine with regulating. So it's usually like we're both going through the same thing. Or one of us is and the other one can't. It's hard to be empathetic and stuff. So like, no, it kind of, is just me, I guess.
I hear you. So and Sue, she said on the chat, she said, I agree about the ongoing triggers. So this is life, right? Life will always throw triggers at us. We very rarely have our ideal situation and our ideal environment for very long. Sometimes we get snapshots of it and we feel like, it's core memory. But other times it feels like our life is just utter chaos. And with that, it's going to be about that discipline of the intentionality of doing the basic breath work, the basic bodily function work that we can do. And that might be what I did to start doing this. And I started with a family. I'll give a little bit of an example. I worked with a family who was in the behavioral health system for over a decade, longer than I was. And all of the children had extreme trauma, and it led to a lot of medical struggles. So liver failure, and the parents both had extreme medical issues due to living under stress. The police were always at the home. The kids were constantly being hospitalized. Crisis was called nonstop. So every single day, I created a program with them. Every single day we got together and we spent 15 minutes together every single day doing 12 minutes with soft belly breathing, was like this breathwork exercise, which I can send to Camille and we can send out in an email to you guys. So you can have an MP3 recording of it saved to your phone of how to do this exercise. And you can just play it whenever you need to. But we did 12 minutes a day of soft belly breathing exercises. And then the other 3 minutes were are practicing our gratitude. And it was list 5 things that you love about yourself. And then you're going to say something nice that you love about your family members around you. And they needed the connection that created. They needed the opportunity to shift their brain from constant trouble and talking about the crap to talking about the good. And they needed to re-regulate their nervous system. And once they were able to do that, we did that. I want to say we did that for 8 months straight. We did it for 8 months straight. We went out there 15 minutes a day, and the child's liver failure completely reversed and she was healthy again. There was there was no need for hospitalization, no crisis services. They dropped out of high needs care and they dropped down to regular level care. We took out every other intervention except for psychiatric services, which they've always had, and just did that because all the other interventions were adding to the chaos. And the outcome was phenomenal. And I did it with them, and it changed my life. Those practices got me through my postpartum struggles, my postpartum anxiety, my postpartum intrusive thoughts and obsessive compulsive intrusive thoughts, my moments of depression. I regained my sense of control through it. And so that's like a preventative measure of saying, okay, can I get 15 minutes a day? It could be the 15 minutes you're falling asleep. Right? It could be like everyone else is asleep, and as I fall asleep, I'm going to do this. It could be that simple that you integrate it in there. It could be while you're driving, right? You put it on while you're driving and you're running errands, but just allowing yourself to focus and practice that, because that soft belly breathing is stimulating that vagus nerve. It's toning that vagus nerve, which is communicating to our brain that we're safe, and we're getting our body to get regulated so we don't live in panic and survival mode 24/7. And Katie, if you're constantly triggered, you're in survival mode, my friend. You are in survival mode all of the time. Your brain that's the hormone that's pumped the most, right? That's the communication that is the largest in your brain. That muscle is the biggest. Now we got to challenge it. We have to build different muscles and different ways to doing it. So it's not an easy fix. It's not like a magic pill, or a magic wand to fix it. It takes that really intentional practice around it. But that can help create that homeostasis platform, that ground that we talked about, so that you have a level to come back down to if you don't have that already. And when you have a homeostasis, people can live in extreme, there's people from concentration camps who have given interviews around how they survived. And it was all about creating their own internal regulation, homeostasis, gratitude, thoughts for the future, giving themselves hope to get through the most unlivable situations and survive amidst people who were not surviving, right? And so this stuff is powerful. It seems simple, but it takes practice, and you can do it through the toughest situations. I'm sorry, my dog's freaking out. I don't know if you can hear that.
Your dog needs some regulation.
Yeah, it's probably the doorbell. It's on guard. She is gonna get everyone. Okay. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? I know it's not the super simple magic wand answer, but yeah.
I think that makes sense. I think for me, I totally identify with being triggered a lot. And it seems like I have found that taking the time for me to regulate, whatever that means, right? Sometimes it's meditation, sometimes it's breathing, sometimes it's saying the same mantra over and over again. Sometimes it's, my bike rides that I take in the morning. If I make that time and do it really consistently, that's when I'm most able to manage triggers. It's when I can see the trigger and be like, okay, you could probably manage this one, right? And then we take it out of the dad gets upset and brother gets upset and everybody's upset, right? Because often when I'm dysregulated and I don't have what I need, my kid flipping out means I flip out, and that doesn't help anybody. But it is hard. I will totally agree that it's been hard to get. I mean, I'm 44 years old, right? It's a practice that I have to be consistent with. And when I'm not, I can really tell.
Yeah, I still have my moments, and I've had to create a plan with my husband. If I'm losing it and I tell you I need a break, you got to come in strong. You got to come in regulated and organized. Do not come in what's going on? Do not, you got to put your best foot forward, my friend. Just give me 90 seconds and I'll be back. Can you do it for 90 seconds? Right? And we've worked out a plan for it. And sometimes I don't need a full 90 seconds. Sometimes I can go to the other room and take a few deep breaths and calm myself down quick enough. I'm okay, all right, I've got this, and I'll go back in. But if I don't have that agreement, it's before my husband and I made that agreement, it was I'm triggered, so he's triggered, right? And if mom's not regulated, nobody is regulated.
Yep. Totally.
Oh, it's like I set the tone for the home. And we talked about this a little bit, but this is the next W. Where do we do this? We can do this everywhere, right? They don't require the perfect space and the perfect time to implement. It's all about action rather than perfection. And I think that's a really important thing. Done is better than perfect. If I don't get it right one time, it doesn't mean I give up. If I don't get the results that I wanted the first time, it doesn't mean I give up, right? We're going to keep going and we're going to keep taking action. And then we'll find our groove. We can't expect to get it right the first time, and we can't expect it to work the first time. We've got to regulate our body and rebuild this for our body and our nervous system, which is going to take some time. And that's a statement, like a phrase that I say to myself all the time: done is better than perfect, right? Done is better than perfect. And that helps with some of my triggers, like the triggers of I need a clean house, right? Done is better than perfect. I don't care if they're all like, I don't care if they're all shoved into his little playroom and the door's closed. Like, done is better than perfect. My counter is clean. I can go to bed. Whatever it needs to be for yourself, to recognize, okay, these are my triggers. These are the things that upset me. I know that they upset me. I know that it's what gets me, like, sets me off, and I have no tolerance left. So what are the things I'm going to take into control to do it? Done is better than perfect, right? Sometimes my son has a pepperoni sandwich for dinner. Done is better than perfect. Like, I don't have it within me to make an extravagant meal. Here's what's in the fridge, your pepperoni sandwich. Like, done is better than perfect. And there's just these times that we have to give ourselves that grace so we can take some of that, I don't know, release some of that steam that's built up and pressure that's built up inside us. Okay, do you guys have any questions? That's the end of my slides. I'll send the soft belly breathing, Camille and Jenny, to you guys so it can get sent out.
Did you want to go off Facebook Live now? That'd be a good time.
Yes, yeah, we can hop off. Thank you, everybody in Facebook world.
Thanks, everybody.